morning, ladies and gentlemen. This is J.R. Moore coming to you live from deep in the mountains of the Missouri Ozarks on Friday, the 20th day of October, year of our Lord 2017, and welcome to the John Moore Show. Here's your prepper tip of the day. It's something I need to repeat frequently. I want to encourage all of you to get your training. There's lots of training you can get, but the two basic skill sets that I really urge people to get are emergency first aid training and your ham radio training. Get your ham radio license. That's your prepper tip of the day. We had our meeting yesterday to plan our training for our local group during calendar year 2018, which includes a ham radio class that Tom Berryhill, I hope, will volunteer to be part of as our primary instructor, followed by the implementation of a new ham radio club in Viburnum, Missouri. That will be this coming spring of 2018. And with that said, we do have a patient waiting in the green room, my friend Tom Berryhill. Tom Berryhill is a gentleman who began his interaction with the ham radio community and got his ham radio license just over half a century ago. Tom has went on to become quite an expert, although he doesn't consider himself an expert. I do, in the area of ham radio and radio frequency communications. Good morning, Tom.
Good morning, John. I don't know if I deserve all those kind words, but thank you very much.
Well, you do, sir. You were trained in the Motorola area of professional expertise, weren't you, sir?
Well, John, early on, I got interested in repeater systems. I first got on the air in 1967 with ham radio, and then by around 1970, the ham operators became very interested in repeater systems and local communications using VHF FM. Well, there wasn't any ham radio equipment available unless you built it yourself, and it would be quite complex to build something like that from scratch. So they were picking up surplus equipment, World War II equipment, used equipment that was previously from the taxi cab, police, fire department service, and they would take those surplus radios and convert them into the ham radio bands, and that's what we used early on. The first VHF equipment I had was called a Motorola coffin box because they looked like a small coffin. There was a separate transmitter and a separate receiver, and it took up at least half of the trunk of the older cars. And you know, John, in the old days, the trunk of a car was huge, and those radios took up quite a bit of space. They had what was called a dynamotor power supply, which was a motor that ran off the 6 or 12-volt system in the car, and that, in turn, generated the high voltage that ran the tubes in those radios. That's what we used, and that's what I got interested in. And so it was in those days, it was Motorola, General Electric, and RCA. They were the big guns in the communications business. We built some early repeater systems. The first one I built was about 1974, and it was used General Electric equipment, tube-type equipment. The receiver was solid state, but the transmitter had tubes in it. And then another system followed that was very similar, and we put that on top of a very tall building in Clayton, Missouri, which was the really a central. It was a county seat for St. Louis County, and also very tall buildings, as you know, John, in that area. And our antenna was on top of a 15-story building. We had tremendous coverage around the St. Louis area, and we had it interconnected with the telephone system. So we had HT radios, and they were basically like a handheld telephone. And there's only a couple of us on that unit, on that system. It was a private system. It was on UHF 450 megahertz band,
right?
And it worked quite well. That was General Electric. I also had some RCA equipment, and then in later years, the interest in it grew considerably, and then much of the equipment became available from the regular ham radio manufacturers, such as ICOM, Yaesu, Kenwood, and so on. So those are the big ones in the business, and they started producing that type of equipment, and it caught on. And to this day, that's what most of the new hams will start out with, is some of the VHF equipment made by one of those companies.
Well, I can imagine the trunk of a Crown Vic in 1970, half filled with this kind of equipment, and the mobile units were using vacuum tubes also.
Oh yeah, John. In the early days, in fact, I don't know if you could even get the tubes for those things anymore. The transmitter I had was a Motorola 30D. D as in David. People could look this up and probably find pictures. I know online there's some photos showing old police radio systems, and they have the trunk of like a 1951 Ford or something opened, and you can see the equipment in there and a big antenna on the back. It was some monstrous stuff. The transmitter was a 30D, and the receiver I had was a 16V, V as in Victor. And they were separate units that were interconnected with cables. And then I went on later from there. I had an 80D, which was all in one box with a transmitter receiver. They were both tube type again, but smaller tubes, the regular 7 and 9 pin tubes that you would find in television sets, from the probably around the 60s. And then we went on to other equipment. Some of the Motorola equipment I used back in those days, some of the early radios. In one case, I had a Motorola Motrack. That thing was worth many times more than the car it was in. And John, I'll tell you what. Every time I was a teenager and had kind of a lead foot, and I was well known to the cops because they pulled me over. Occasionally, the cops would pull me over just because they wanted to see what I was up to. The police department, the local police department, these guys could not stand the fact that I had a radio that was very similar to theirs. In fact, mine was a little bit better. There was only 2 frequencies. I had a little toggle switch change between frequency 1 and frequency 2. Mine had the 4-channel switch on it, so I had 4 channels on that Motorola Motrack. And
right.
Boy, that just drove those cops crazy. They always accused me of listening into them and all kinds of stuff, but that wasn't the case. I wasn't listening to them. But we did have several ham radio repeaters on in the St. Louis area, and I could switch between the various frequencies that were available. And then later we got into the better equipment. Motorola MOCOM 70s was a budget-type unit that Motorola made, but it was a pretty good piece of equipment. And then the state-of-the-art back in the mid-70s was a Motorola MyCore, and then there were several versions of that we used. And then, but I'll tell you, if people building repeater equipment to hams listening, if they want to build something from scratch, to this day, in my opinion, there is nothing better than the General Electric Master 2. The GE Master 2 was one of the finest pieces of two-way radio equipment ever built. Some of those are still on the air to this day. I have 5 or 6 of them sitting out in the barn. They came from the St. Louis airport when they narrow-banded everything and shut everything down. There was a fellow in St. Louis that had to dispose of all that equipment, and he didn't want to throw it away, so he put it in his garage, and then he advertised it for sale. So I put all that stuff in the back of a pickup truck and bought all of it from him. And maybe someday I'll put some of it to use, but these are very, very nice systems. So anybody that's in the ham radio and wants to build a repeater system, they should give that type of equipment some consideration. There's some really nice stuff out there today, John, that's built by Kenwood, ICOM, Yaesu. That's digital modulation, the new digital modes, and as well as analog. And they're very nice radios, very nice repeater systems. They're very expensive.
Right.
But I'm telling you, you just can't beat that Master 2.
Right. We our repeater, we have our ham radio repeater in Viburnum is a Motorola unit that I think previously had been in the back of a Missouri Highway Patrol cruiser. That was reprogrammed by an expert to be usable as a ham repeater. I'll make sure you get a chance to see it, Tom, the next time you're out for our next ham radio class this coming spring. And like I said earlier, we're going to be starting a new ham radio club in Viburnum, Missouri. We have, I think, half a dozen current hams in our area, and we're going to be commencing training for several people expressed interest yesterday in training and getting their license at our business meeting yesterday. And let's see, I got the date here for the ham radio. Let's see, that would be, okay, when is ham radio? Looks like May the 5th, Saturday, May 5th, if you can put that in your calendar. Saturday, May 5th.
Okay, well, I'd sure like to go, John. I'm not in your exact area, but if it's open to outsiders, I'd sure like to attend.
Well, that's the training class that you're going to be
well, sure, I'll definitely be there for that.
But
and John, is that the repeater where you have the classes? You can look out the window and see the tower down the street?
You can, yeah. That's
okay.
The same, right? That's it. This coming Monday, we're going to do a test of our FM transmitter in Viburnum, Missouri, and I'll put a note out to all our people to be listening. We try to do this twice a year. Get everything put together. We keep everything in a Faraday box, so it's safe from EMP. It takes about 10 minutes to get the box open, get the equipment all connected and ready to go. I'll be training one or two of our people to make sure we got the max amount of people trained to use this equipment. And we're broadcasting on a commercial FM frequency, which under FCC rules you're allowed to do under emergency circumstances. And we use a frequency that's open in our area, which, considering how remote it is, it's most of that spectrum is open. So we'll set it up, broadcast for a few minutes, have people listening to make sure they hear the signal okay, and we'll shut everything down after a few minutes and pack it away for another half a year. The reason I'm telling you all this stuff, ladies and gentlemen, is to stimulate some thought on your part. What we're doing in my community can be done in any community. These FM transmitters are sold on eBay and on Amazon. You can get pretty much everything you need for about $300, can't you, Tom?
That seems to be about the price. In some cases, even less than that. Some of those units, 30 watts output, that will easily cover an entire community, a small community, not a major metropolitan area. You need a lot more power for that. But in the smaller communities, 30 watts will do it easily, and that system, $300, about right, John, but I've seen those things for $100.
Right,
so
right.
The prices are all over the place. You just have to do some shopping.
We're setting up our second FM transmitter here in my township, Osage Township, probably in the next week or two. There's three or four of us working on that, and initially it's going to be a FM transmitter, a CB, a two-way transceiver, and I'll be working with the Crawford County Emergency Services people to make arrangements to have a frequency to talk to what they call CENTCOM, if and when the need ever arises. And we're going to be expanding that into the rest of Crawford County also, that each township hopefully would have their own communications with their own people and could communicate with CENTCOM in the event that the telephones don't work anymore. And the telephones, under certain circumstances, will go down, won't they, Tom?
Well, they certainly will, and that happens to me. You know, John, we had copper wire back to the central office in town, about a 4-mile trip for my telephone line, and they did away with that. I'm thinking about 10 years ago, approximately. They trenched in new fiber optic lines. So right across the road from me is fiber optic lines from the central office, and then they have, I guess you could call them repeater stations every mile or so to boost the signal, and then to split that out to the copper wires that go to the individual homes and farms and commercial buildings and so on. But I'll tell you what, there's backup batteries in those units, and I went across the road when they were installing that thing to take a look at it. and they showed me the workings of the inside of that cabinet. The fiber optic is terminated in there. They tap into that, and they can split out the individual signals, phone signals to the copper lines. And John, there's a backup battery in there, and those guys told me that thing will only last about 2 hours when the power is out.
Right.
Now, that really surprised me. The power has been out longer than that. The last major power outage we had around here was about 15, 16 hours, something like that. And the phone system worked the whole time. So it was, maybe they've increased the batteries, I don't know. But it doesn't last that long. Years ago in this area, when they still had the copper lines running, they still had to have backup power. They transmitted some of the power to the remote repeater boxes by cables that were trenched right alongside the copper lines that carried the phone signals. But that wasn't enough, and they would go around, when there was major power outages, they would actually go out to the remote cabinets and set up a generator. And then the phone company had problems with people stealing the generators. So they would chain them. Yeah, they'd chain them to a pole or a tree, and that helped a lot. But they actually had to run these generators, and they had a guy going around with cans of gas filling up these generators on a regular basis just to keep those cabinets running. It was a problem. I think this fiber optic thing works a lot better, but there's still outages, and every once in a while I can't even get a dial tone. They did tell me it's a VoIP system, so it's voice over internet from once it gets into that cabinet, it goes into the fiber optic. So it's a totally new type of system. It works pretty good most of the time. But
I'm surprised the utility company would use a gas power generator instead of propane. Now here in our area, we have a tower, a fairly new tower put up for emergency services, and they have a propane generator and a propane tank, and the copper thieves stole the copper line between the propane tank and the generator. So.
Oh, yeah. Well, you know, what they're powering here is just these small cabinets. There's no tower or anything. There's a small utility pole with an electric meter on it, and they have an electric drop to that, and that powers the little cabinet. The cabinet's about the size of like a very small refrigerator, and in that are the it's actually they were what's called T1. They were data systems, and then they created voice circuits on each. I think each T1 channel would handle 24 voice circuits, and that's how they were doing it.
Hold that thought, Tom. We got a break. Call number is 800-313-9443. We'll be right back. Ladies and gentlemen, J.R. Moore here. As most of you know, my regular listeners, I offer energy cleaners for sale at my website. If you don't have a clue what I'm talking about, go to my website, thelibertyman.com, educate yourself about these marvelous healing devices. We focus on pain mitigation and getting a great night's sleep. Arthritis pain, joint pain, back pain, doesn't matter. Keep in mind, I offer from me to you personally a 30-day money-back guarantee. That's what I do. Energy cleaners, $285, shipping included to American zip codes. You can educate yourself all about the energy cleaner right there at my website, the patent application, the wonderful testimonials. Be sure and check out the factory-made fitted mattress pads to go with the energy cleaner. Now, I offer from me to you personally a 30-day money-back guarantee. That's what I do. I have a toll-free order line, or you can order it right at my website at thelibertyman.com. That toll-free order line is 800-592-9543. I say again, 800-592-9543. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, J.R. Moore here. It's taken 3 years before I could offer the inter-shelter domes for sale. During those 3 years, several different governments and militaries were taking all their production. The inter-shelter dome homes may be just what you've been looking for to provide affordable, energy-efficient, permanent, and attractive housing. These dome homes are prefabricated units that can be assembled in a few hours by 2 men with a ladder and simple hand tools. Check out the photos of these dome homes built in the Arctic, on tropical beaches, in suburban areas, and in forests. All the details, many photographs, and the pricing of the dome homes are listed on the left-hand side of my homepage at thelibertyman.com. I think you'll find these homes are not only attractive, but they're energy efficient, and a bonus, you can disassemble them and reassemble them as many times as you feel you need to. Pretty great, huh? Something that's very, very unique. Check them out at my website at the J.R. Moore here on Friday the 20th of October, visiting with Tom Berryhill. We're talking about emergency communications. Tom, I want to go through our training schedule for 2018. We're in the third year of our local group, having monthly training starting our third year in a couple months of 2018. And the reason I'm doing this is we got people all over the United States. There's more than 3,000 counties in the United States. I believe it's around 3,300 counties in the United States. In my opinion, Tom, every county should have their own emergency preparedness. What do you think, sir?
Well, I agree 100%, John. You know, a friend of mine is on the 911 board here in our county, and he took me on a private tour of their dispatch center. They just built it. It's brand new. It's a very nice setup. There's room for expansion, and they have some real nice equipment there. And the lady that runs it, when she found out I was a ham radio operator, she says, "Oh, we have some ham radio equipment here." And they went in the back storage room and brought out this box. And they had the brand-new equipment sitting in a box, but nobody knew what to do with it.
Right.
So I offered to help them get that set up. And I think this came in with federal government grants, and they have sent a lot of this equipment to the various counties or their dispatch centers, but they need help getting this set up. And I think it's a good idea for them to have that. So I would encourage ham operators to maybe check with their county emergency management agencies and see if they do need any help getting that equipment installed.
Well, you simulate some thought on my part, just telling me that, Tom, because I'm in the dispatch office for the local emergency services at least once a month, sometimes twice a month, and it never even occurred to me to talk to them about that topic, but I will do so in the next week or so, and I'll be talking to some other officials as well. But here's our training schedule for 2018. In January, CPR. February, first responder training. March will be gardening preparation and permaculture. April will be a herb and wild edible walk. Well, the instructor will teach us how to identify, collect, and prepare herbs and wild edibles. May, ham radio, as we discussed earlier. June will be what's called a Pioneer Fun Day, where there'll be 6 or 8 exhibits set up of various pioneering skills, kind of like an old-fashioned the way that there's different ways this has been set up in the past in different locations, but it'll be a fun day for preparing food, campsites, shelter, and so forth. July will be first aid, practical first aid, I should say. August, food preservation. September will be firefighting for the homeowner. October will be a carbine class. In November, ammunition reloading. And December will be primitive weapons, making primitive weapons, bows, crossbows, axes, knives, tomahawks, all those things. And that's our training schedule for 2018. Pretty complete, don't you think, Tom?
It is, and I'm interested in all of it. John, you didn't mention a class that you had in the past that always interested me, and I was unable to attend, but I believe you had a registered nurse that taught how to suture wounds. That would be very interesting.
Suturing, actually, that the hands-on first aid that will include suturing. Yeah, and that was you were there at the or no, you weren't there, were you?
No, I'd never attended one, but I'd like to. I've had a few injuries myself that I had to sew up, and the last time I just used super glue. It worked pretty good, but I'd sure like to know about that suturing.
Well, it takes the mystery out of it, because before I attended the suturing class, the whole thing was kind of mysterious to me, but doing a hands-on class for suturing was a great opportunity to take the mystery out of that. It's a very simple procedure, actually, and I'm glad I took that class. And I'll talk to the instructor for the hands-on first aid and make sure that suturing is part of it. But like I mentioned earlier, Tom, there's more than 3,300 counties in the United States. Every county should have their own emergency preparedness, and it should be broken down even further to the township, I believe, don't you, Tom?
I think so. And this, as far as ham radio goes, that is an easy thing to do if you take a township and set up a frequency that the ham operators know to tune into when there's anytime there's an emergency. That'd be a very wise system to set up, especially if they have a base station at the dispatch center that the regular 911 dispatchers can access. Of course, they'd have to be licensed ham operators, but it's not too hard to do. I think the test is only 25 or 30 questions. They're pretty basic. The answers are published, and I hate to say it, John, but if you're good at memorization, you can pass that test. You don't have to know anything about it.
Absolutely. Well, that's true. And it is simple. The ham radio test, they pull the questions from a pool. And we'll talk about that more after the break. Stay tuned.
You are tuned in to the Republic Broadcasting Network. Visit our website by going to republicbroadcasting.org.
Ladies and gentlemen, J.R. Moore here. We're continuing our energy cleaner promotion, which began August of 2016. In this promotion, you get to buy an energy cleaner, $70 off retail, and a mattress pad, 10% off retail. $200 of the purchase price of the energy cleaner goes to Republic Broadcasting. This is a great way to help get energy cleaners out to people who need them and have some financial issues to deal with. And, of course, a great way to support Republic Broadcasting. Here's what you do. Send in a postcard. My address is John Moore, P.O. Box 201, Davidsville, Missouri. We pick a postcard every 2 weeks. If your postcard is drawn, you get the chance to buy the energy cleaner, $70 off retail, and 10% off the mattress pads. Put your name and your address, your telephone number, and your email address on the postcard, and we wish you the best of luck. Thank you. All right, we are back, ladies and gentlemen. We're back. J.R. Moore here on Friday, the 20th of October. My website is thelibertyman.com. That's thelibertyman.com. If you live anywhere near the East Coast of the United States, the Gulf Coast, Caribbean, you need to read the banner. Click on the banner at the top of my website. It says, Isla Palma, about to fall into the sea. An update there from my friend Professor McCanney. Since he wrote his update, there's been even more earthquakes in the Canary Islands, which in the past, we're talking a long time ago, many thousands of years, has caused a tidal wave that took out the east coast of the United States. So you really need to read that seriously. Also, my website, of course, are energy cleaners for sale. Marvelous healing devices. That's what they are. We focus on arthritis pain, joint pain, back pain. Typically, the energy cleaner will help all of those things. If it doesn't, small percentage chance. If it doesn't, I offer a 30-day money-back guarantee. Go to my website, read up on the energy cleaner, read the testimonials there from people that I know and trust, like Steve Whitman. Read the patent application information, then make your decision. Go ahead and get your energy cleaner. It's only $285, shipping included to American zip codes. Pick yourself out a mattress pad to go with it. It's a great combination. I'm shipping out an energy cleaner and a king-size pad today, as a matter of fact. This is my home business. When you place your order, I'm the guy that packs them up. I put them on the counter at the little country post office in Cherryville, Missouri, at the country store there. And every time I sit one on the counter, I feel like here's another one for the good guys. Here's somebody else that's going to get their life back and have the health and energy they need to do the things that they want to do. You can place your order right there at my website at thelibertyman.com using PayPal, MasterCard, Visa. Checks can be sent to my address at thelibertyman.com. And my toll-free order line, here it is, 24 hours a day. Don't try to call me at this. Order is only 800-592-9543. I say again, 800-592-9543. Visiting with Tom Berryhill, we're talking about emergency communications and related matters. And, Tom, we got a regular caller here we haven't heard from for a while, Glenn in Philadelphia. Good morning, Glenn.
Good morning, John. Good morning, Tom. Hi. Yep, just real busy with work, but I've been listening. In the previous work incarnation, I had done installation and repair work for Bella, PA. And around here, we have Bella, PA, well, we have Verizon now, and now, Bella, PA became Verizon. We have Verizon now vending communications and data services, and we have Comcast as the big cable provider, and they now provide landline phone service, and they're doing cell phone. So it's this whole big Hegelian dialectic, Coke versus Pepsi, Ford versus Chevy thing going on between the two of them, and they all have their commercials. Our service is better, faster, cheaper. No, our service is better, faster, cheaper all the time. And until a few months ago, I still had a twisted copper pair phone line, on copper all the way back to the frame at the CO. And I always kept this. I didn't use the line much, but I always valued that as sort of an insurance policy. Well, when I moved in, that line was just over $20 a month. It's been creeping up over 30. It's heading towards 40. And I can't see paying, $400, $500 a month for an insurance policy phone line, so I did give it up. But our lines are up on poles, so like you said, where you are, they got rid of the copper wire. Well, we still have that in place around here, and it's very dependable. And they do the gas generator thing around here as well on the poles, both Comcast and Verizon. But with Verizon, you also have, it's funny, Verizon runs the fiber all the way into the house to this little transmitter box, and then it goes on the copper at the interface for the house. And that's when it goes out to copper. But those things have batteries in them that cost you $40 a crack. If you get them from them, you can get them for about $15-16 over the internet. But those, so you have a battery at the unit you were talking about. You have a battery in the house. There's something to be said for the simplicity of the old copper, twisted copper pair phone line with a 48-volt DC dial tone and a 96-volt AC ringtone, and it's just was dependable as all get out. And they had big honking batteries at the CO that last forever. So when I started with them, they still had mechanical relays in a lot of the frames. Walk into the CO and you would click, 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 click. I miss the good old days.
Well, I agree, Glenn. And around here, the copper lines are still there, but they've all but abandoned them. The only copper around here is from the house underground across the road to the cabinet, and then from there it's actually a VoIP circuit over fiber optic. back to the central
Okay,
office.
now which company is that? Which company is that?
Fidelity Telephone. They're in Sullivan, Missouri. John, are you on their service?
Yeah.
No. Steelville Telephone provides my service. They do a great job, by the way.
They're still using tin cans and strings, aren't they, down there in Steelville?
Oh, no. We got past those about 2 or 3 weeks ago. Yeah.
Oh, okay, good. Glenn, it's Fidelity Telephone, and they have a pretty darn good system. You know, I was in their central office. I knew some of the guys that worked there, and they took me in the back and showed me where they did have all the frames, and they had the rack cabinets and everything with all the. They even had some Strogers that were still working in there, and they ripped all that out. You can see the outlines on the floor where the cabinets used to be. Now in one corner of that big room are a couple of computers. They're like tall tower PC type computers, and that runs the entire exchange for the whole area. Right.
Well, that's good. And they apparently translate to copper out at the BD box, the SAC or whatever they call it. But the funny thing around here is they advertise, fiber versus copper. Well, the Comcast cable company runs, a coaxial copper wire into your house to your router, and your cable boxes. But so they run copper, but back at the box out on the pole, they're on fiber too. So basically everybody's on fiber. It's just that Verizon runs the fiber in your house, and the other outfit might have another 50, 100 yards of copper. That's the only difference between them. But boy, do they play off. They play games of that in the advertising and marketing.
Well, there's a lot, like you mentioned, batteries. There's a lot of battery power involved in telephone systems, and especially when they're isolated between cabinets with only fiber optic. Unless they run some power lines with that, they have to rely on utility power to run those systems, along with battery backup. In a long power outage, those things will fail to operate. So
that's why I paid for the. That's why I paid for the copper line, but I can't really rationalize spending, $400 or more dollars per month, or per year rather, for something that's functioning basically as a communications insurance policy. I did finally give it up.
Well, the old system was very reliable because the central office, all of that equipment ran on battery banks, huge battery banks, and they charged those off the utility power and also generator backups. Usually diesel or natural gas or propane-powered generators.
Oh, yeah.
And they would keep those things fueled up. And the whole system ran on a 48-volt battery. Now, that's why anytime there was a power outage, you could pick up a regular landline phone, and it always worked.
Yeah, like I said, I did finally give it up. I'm stuck with cell phone and my handy talkies. It's because that, so...
there you go, and of course, back to battery. Now, the cellular system is pretty reliable, and all of the towers do have battery backup. The smaller ones may even have some solar power, but typically they'll have a generator system, and in almost every case, they're either natural gas or propane powered. Out here in the rural areas, there's usually a propane tank. I'll see a 500-gallon propane tank sitting next to usually an Onan or a CAT or Generac type system, and that runs the whole building, including the tower lights. Those towers, if they're, I believe it's 197 feet or taller, they have to have the blinking red lights. So they have some pretty tall towers out here in the sticks, so they're typically lighted, and they have to make sure that those lights stay on. So that takes a lot of power, too.
Gotcha. All right, well, thank you, Tom. Thank you, John. Take care.
Okay, thank you.
Have a good weekend. Bye-bye.
There was
you see the weak link there, John? The weak link in every case, batteries.
It is. I was working with the St. Louis City Police Communications a few years back, and we came to the topic of backup communications. It shocked me, but it makes perfect sense. On the street corners all over St. Louis, Missouri, you'll see these cast iron pedestals that stand about 7.5, 8 feet tall, with a box on top, that were installed more than a century ago. for police communications before there was anything such as radios even thought of, or at least been used, I should say. I think Marconi was doing his first radios back then, but it turns out those cast iron pedestals are still the backup communication for the police and fire department in case everything else breaks down.
Were those the telephone unit that the cops could pull up to and call back? Yeah.
Exactly.
I didn't know those were still in use. That's amazing. Well, but you got to have it, I suppose.
They're in use. Another interesting little historical thing. One of Steve McQueen's early movies, 1959, titled "The Great St. Louis Bank Robbery," which
it was Southwest Bank, wasn't it?
It was based on something that did happen, the Southwest Bank robbery, Southwest Bank. There's a scene in there where they show the communications department for the St. Louis City Police Department, and of course, the movie was filmed only, I think, about 6 or 7 years after the actual bank robbery. So that equipment was still in use, the same equipment, and they set up the movie people set up inside the communications department there at St. Louis City Police Department, and they filmed the women operators operating all that equipment, which of course was state of the art at the time, but now it's all antiques and very primitive by today's standards. But it was a fascinating scene for anybody that's into communications.
Oh yeah, I've seen some of that, John. It is rather interesting if you're familiar with that type of equipment. All the here in Missouri anyway, and I'm sure other states are similar. There are HF backup systems, so they are licensed to operate around 1 kilowatt of power with single sideband equipment. Some of them have data interfaces as well, so they can send email type messages and so on. And they operate in a shortwave spectrum. From some of them are licensed around 2 megahertz up to, I believe it's somewhere around 9 or 10 megahertz. Or maybe it's only 8, I don't remember, but they typically will operate most of the time. And of course, you have to change this depending on whether it's day or night. But it's they operate between 2 and 8 or 10 megahertz, and this allows the state agencies and the county governments and local governments to communicate back to the state capital and between themselves for emergency communications if all else fails. And you can look at the FCC database and you can see what systems are licensed. You'll find that in almost every case, every county in the state has one of these HF systems now. I'll drive past a courthouse or or county seat, and I can look at the antennas and see kind of what they have. And most of the time, I'll spot that HF antenna. In some cases, it's a dipole, and they have an automatic antenna tuner on that unit. And I actually saw one of them one time. It was a Motorola Micom, which is a very nice piece of equipment. It's about 125 watts, although they were authorized up to 1 kilowatt peak power, so they could run a lot of power, although they really wouldn't need it for statewide coverage, and 125 watts would be more than adequate for that type of service. But these counties have all put these in now. I doubt if there's one that doesn't have it. I'm sure there were state and federal grants to put this all in, and so it's a backup system if all else fails. When it hits the fan, that's possibly what they'll be used.
Right. A friend of mine, I won't mention his name, but you know who he is, back in the 1970s when he was in Thailand, he got an assignment. He's working for NATO to climb up on the wall of the Russian embassy to look at their antennas so he could determine what their capabilities were.
It's real simple. It's real simple, John. You can look at the antennas, and depending on the size of the elements, you can figure this out. And the formula, when you want to, for the ham operators out there, if you want to make a quarter wave antenna, it's quarter wave and half wave antennas are typically used on the HF spectrum, and it's just 234 divided by the frequency in megahertz gives you the length in feet. And then if it's a half, that's for quarter wave, and if it's a half wave antenna, like a dipole, a half wave dipole, which is a very simple to make and very easy to set up antenna, that would be 468 divided by the frequency in megahertz. So it's real simple. The calculations are simple, and they're rapidly deployed, those types of antennas.
Right. I know sometimes visitors to my home, they look up and see my Yagi antenna up there, and they're impressed with it because it is a very professional-looking piece of equipment. So getting back to
I didn't know you had one of those. What frequency is that for?
It's for the cell phone frequency, so I can get cell phone service here.
Okay, yep. So that's a pretty small Yagi antenna, yeah.
It is. And when we start our ham radio club in Viburnum, Missouri, it's going to be a combination of fun and socialization, plus learning and training, and that's what keeps people coming back is the social and fun part of it, isn't it, Tom?
Yeah, it really is, and you have an interesting group there, John. You really do. I've got to meet some of those people and talk with them after we've had our meetings, and it's always been enjoyable. Really met some nice and interesting people.
Right, and typically when these groups get together, there's shared values, shared beliefs, and we share knowledge between us. And I learn things that are very helpful to me when I go to these, because everybody's got their own areas of expertise, and I always bring in something to write with, because I'll hear about websites, I'll hear about equipment, I'll find out about things that I would never ever find out about otherwise, and that brings a lot of value to the table, doesn't it, Tom?
Well, it really does. And John, I've always noticed that no matter what, everywhere you go, anytime you're sitting there, when we're in a restaurant or anywhere, you always have paper and pencil close to hand.
I do. Always.
Always taking notes, yes.
Here's our break. Call numbers 800-313-9443. We'll be right back. All right, we are back, ladies and gentlemen. We're back. J.R. Moore here on Friday the 20th of October, visiting with Tom Berryhill. We're talking about emergency communications and related matters. Tom, ham radio, the ham radio hobby, I should say, can and should be a family hobby. We routinely have 8 and 10-year-old boys and girls getting a ham radio license, and of course older folks as well. And it's not terribly, as hobbies go, compared to many things like fishing or hunting or photography. It's a pretty inexpensive hobby, isn't it?
Well, it really is, John. I'm glad you mentioned young people. I noticed at some of your meetings there would be several younger people, teenagers and even younger than that are showing some interest, and that really is great, because those young kids, if they get interested in this at their age, they can really develop a knowledge base that is second to none. And some of this you cannot learn even at the finest university. You just can't do it. You can't do it in several years in a university setting. I mean, it's a lifelong education, and we have to learn every day. I mean, I learn something new every day, and I know you do too, John. But if these parents would bring their younger children to these meetings and learn about ham radio, if they have any interest at all in electronics, they can apply this in so many different areas, whether it be communications itself or industrial electronics, or even becoming an electrical contractor, anything like this. You can learn all about it, and the ham radio is a good training ground. And then not only that, John, but when they get on the radio, you never know who you're talking to next. I can't tell you the number of times in my business career that I was trying to do business with a particular company, and once I found out the engineer was a ham radio operator, and they found out I was as well. It's almost like a fraternity. There was an instant connection, and all barriers were dropped, and you were in. I mean, you were instantly connected, and you could easily do business with that company. It just removes a lot of barriers. So any young people could really pick up on this quickly and learn as they go. It doesn't take much effort to get started, to get your license, and it's inexpensive. You can buy kits on eBay to build little transceivers that you can talk all over the country. Now, these are Morse code, but there's other equipment as well, but as low as $5, shipping included.
Right.
You can
right.
you can get a little. John, I passed around that little circuit board kit at the last meeting. I'm sure you saw that.
I remember that. Yes.
That thing was actually less than $5.
Right.
So,
and children like to do things where they're equal to adults, and so an 8-year-old boy or girl is actually involved in adult activity, doing adult things, giving them a sense of value and worth that's based on reality, not some made-up thing they do in these public schools, right, Tom?
That's right, John. And when you get on the ham radio, you'll meet older people with a lot of experience that will help you along. I got to tell a quick story that's kind of funny. When I first got on in 1967, I was 13 years old, and I met a man that was a landline telegrapher for the railroad, and he said if I learned American Morse, he'd buy me this really nice telegraph key, and I learned it, and he bought me the key. It was fun.
Amazing. That was a neat story. Tom, thank you. Have you back next Thursday. We'll talk about energy clinics. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you, John.
Okay. Top of the hour break. We'll be back with Dr. Myers. Stay tuned. All right, we're back with Jared Moore here in our second hour on Friday, the 20th of October. Prepper tip of the day. I want to encourage all of you to get all the training you need. There's dozens of skills that would be helpful for preparedness. 2 basic skills are emergency first aid training, including CPR, and, of course, ham radio skills. Get your ham radio license. That's your prepper tip of the day. We were hoping that Dr. Myers would call in. Apparently he has not called yet, and if he does, we will certainly have Dr. Myers on, as we do most Friday mornings, second hour. Okay, we'll go ahead and have open lines. The call number is 800-313-9443. I was reading an article this morning at, it looks like Dr. Myers has called in. Dr. Phil Myers is a chiropractic physician living and working in my hometown, St. Louis, Missouri. He's my personal physician, by the way, the only doctor I go to voluntarily. If I have to have a mandatory insurance checkup, I'll have to see a medical doctor, which is the only time I ever talk to a medical doctor for professional reasons. And easy to get started with Dr. Myers, real easy. All you do, this is it, all you got to do, call his office to set up that first private, no-charge consultation. That's 314-878-6868. Good morning, Doctor.
Good morning, John. How's everything going?
Well, no complaints. We're having what should be a pretty normal fall, it seems like. I'm going to be out running a Kubota tractor, brush hogging, using the blade to blade the driveway, chainsaw, line trimmer, all those outdoor vigorous activities today. How about yourself, sir?
That sounds like fun. No, I'm going to be working with clients all day today, and then doing some yard work at my house as well. It'll be fun. Beautiful day for it.
All right. You're going to be doing any brush hogging at your place?
I don't even know what brush hogging is.
You are definitely a city boy.
Oh, yeah. City as city comes. Definitely for that.
Yeah. I've never done this personally, but I've talked to people who've taken inner city children on a trip to the country and point to beef cattle out in the field and say, "That's where your hamburgers at McDonald's come from," and they are incredulous. They don't believe that could ever possibly be true.
Can I imagine?
Yeah,
it's like
the disconnect. The disconnect.
Oh, it is crazy, and how much more disconnected we are. We are unfortunately getting from nature, and it's one of the things that we really need to start really connecting to, is because you just don't see the geometry, the sacred geometry, the fractal geometry of what we're created with in buildings, in concrete and asphalt. but you see it in flowers and in animals and in wildlife and in nature. You see it all the time, and and there's a connection there. But we just don't get that in what I would consider concrete age.
Right. Well, that brings to mind something. There's an article. I'm going to give the reference so everybody can find it. I need to get this posted on my website. I've talked about this publicly several times. There's virtually no attention to this. The website is shtfplan.com. That's Sierra Hotel Tango Foxtrot Plan.com. The title of the article written by Mark Salvo. That's Mac Salvo, M-A-C, Mac Salvo, S-L-A-V-O. Here's the title of the article dated yesterday's date. Ecological Armageddon warning as insect population numbers plummet. And then in quotes behind that, everything is going to collapse. Doctor, I got a couple of quick stories, personal stories for you, sir.
Go for it.
The first one would be Labor Day weekend 7 years ago. I had a business trip. I was up in Boston, and as part of that business trip, I drove the entire length, east to west, on the interstate in New York State at night on Labor Day weekend, a warm summer evening. Going the speed limit, 70 miles an hour, stopped to get fuel, 10 or 11 o'clock at night, and I noticed I'm getting ready to clean bugs off the windshield. There's maybe 5 bugs on the windshield, maybe. I look up at the bright white lights at the service station. I could literally count the bugs flying around the bright white lights at the service station on a warm summer night in New York State. Fast forward a few years to 3 years ago. I'm in Florida on business. In the summertime, I believe it was August. I'm driving north on the interstate highway in Florida at night in the summertime. I stopped at 70 miles an hour. I stopped to get fuel, 10, 11 o'clock at night, and I'm going to clean bugs off the windshield. Once again, maybe 5 or 6 bugs on the windshield. I look up, and once again, I can count the bugs. What this article does here is give some hard scientific evidence to back up what I've now learned, the following. Within 100 miles of the Atlantic Ocean, 100 miles of the Gulf of Mexico, within 100 miles of the Pacific Ocean, we have a dramatic, scary decrease in flying insects. Now, most people, most of the time, doctor, don't particularly care for bugs on one hand. And that's understandable. That's normal on one hand. On the other, the world we live in cannot exist without flying insects. It simply can't. What this article does is document with scientific evidence what's going on, and there is no resolution that I'm aware of. We are in deep, deep trouble because of the die-off of flying insects. Now, beginning 7 or 8 years ago, maybe 10, as long as 10 years ago, there was a lot of concern about the bee population being decimated, and the beekeepers are bringing them back. But bees are only part of a complete ecological system. So I'm going to encourage people to read that article, inform themselves of that, so that they can be aware of it and incorporate that into their base of knowledge, Doctor.
That's a really good idea. I have a client of mine. She's an amazing woman. She's a beekeeper as well. But one of the things that she has on her on her property, she's got this beautiful garden. I mean, it's probably a good quarter acre of that she's created this beautiful land for gardening. Everything from tomatoes to, just everything. And one of the things, obviously, she doesn't use any herbicides or pesticides. She uses compost fertilizer and all that kind of stuff. But she says it's really interesting, even comparatively, other farmers that use that type of organic farming, their plants and vegetables are already starting to stop producing fruit, and her garden is still thriving, and she's like, I can't even keep up with it anymore. The one thing that she does, and I asked her, I'm like, what are you doing so differently? Is it the water that you're feeding him? She's like, no. Which is the same thing that everybody else is doing. Is like, what are you doing differently? She's just like, I put bugs in my gardens to help the ecosystem with that the bugs would do. So bugs, I have bugs that kill these bugs. I have bugs that feed off of these bugs. I have bugs that that excrete this chemical for these plants to do this certain things. So she equalizes her garden with all these different types of insects and bugs to help thrive the ecosystem. And so in her garden is still thriving, where even people with the same conventional organic farming process are doing, hers is thriving so much more because of the bugs.
Right. Well, she's achieving a natural balancer is what she's doing. Doctor, I was at a birthday party about 6 or 7 weeks ago. Very warm summer day and evening. Table laid out, a buffet, very tasty food. At least half of it organic, with fruits and vegetables and meat and all these different things. And it was open. It was a pavilion type situation with no screens or anything of that nature, and almost no bugs. You count the flies. And this is cattle country. There is beef cattle around, chickens around, other things, and almost no flies. So this is a real issue, quite frankly. It really is. As much as I don't want flies in my food, I understand the consequences of not having flying insects. So people need to be aware of this. They really do. We're into mid-fall here. People are really busy doing outdoor activities, Doctor. I'm sure you've got clients coming in who've overdone it because it was too darn hot in the summertime to get out and do very much.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I didn't even go out this summer much because it was so dang hot. I waited for the temperature to calm down. But yeah, it was extremely hot.
And so what kind of issues do people coming in with because they've overdone it? And we've got many listeners who've overdone it also. How can we help these people?
Well, it all goes down to I always call when you overdone it, you've lost your flow. And we lose our flow in two ways. We lose our flow because we didn't surrender to the experience and let that experience flow us through. It's like riding a wave. If you go into the wave like you're a surfer and you ride the wave and you surrender to the movement of the wave, then you can participate in it. But if you don't, you're just going to crash and burn. And that's what a lot of people do. They don't realize, they don't take in the consideration of what their body is actually telling them or anything like that. And so they end up crashing because they don't surrender to the experience. The second thing is, let's just say you are an amazing person in surrendering to the experience and in the flow. A lot of people keep on going because it's like, oh, I don't want to get out of this. I don't want to get out of this. I don't want to get out of this. And they don't allow themselves to integrate the experience that they had surrendered to. And so from a going outside standpoint, it's like, okay, know your temperature, know your ecosystem, know what your body can and cannot do, even though it can do everything. What is it in shape enough to do? I always tell people, they're like, well, why did I get like this? I'm like, well, because you wanted to perform up here, which I totally get. You wanted to win the gold medal at the Olympics. I got it. But your body strength, stamina, focus, breath, digestion, energy level is here. And no matter, and you're pushing yourself to always get gold, which is great, but you're pushing yourself beyond your body's capacity because you're not actually training yourself to do the work. you're expecting the work to do the training for you. And I get that a lot when, anybody that's worked with me realizes that I'm strong as a friggin' ox when it comes to the work that I do. And they're like, oh, my God, you probably never have to work out because you're doing this work all the time. Like, no, I think it's the other way around. I train my body to be able to do this work at this level. I wouldn't be able to do the work at the level that I do if it wasn't for the training that I do, if it wasn't for the focused intention and awareness that I have to what my body's telling me about itself and the environment around it. And you really need to. We really, as a society, not just like from the bug standpoint, pay attention to what's going on in our ecosystem, but pay attention to what's going on within our own ecosystem. It can get it's total lack of awareness as far as I'm concerned. Whether it be from lack of awareness of we're never taught, which is fine, or there's developmental stages for everything. But once you hit a certain developmental stage within experience, not in terms of what you think, in terms of what you should be at in terms of particular age, because that's completely different. But we really need to start focusing on where we're at within our developmental stage of performance and action and things like that. If you're starting anything new, you're going to just think about it. If you're starting anything new, you're going to start at the lowest developmental stage. Now, the more you've had experience within those particular events, your development of that is going to skyrocket pretty fast. Whereas if you start something you've never done before, let's just say you want to start speaking Italian and you've never spoken a single other language as far as you know, just being an American. And so it's like, okay, you don't even know how other languages work. You're going to be at the very infantile standpoint of development. And then you start building your way up. Now, after you do Italian for 3, 4, 5 years, and you're like, wow, I really am getting this language thing down. Let's try French. Let's add another Anglo-Saxon language to my repertoire. Your developmental stage maybe started at adolescence instead of baby. And so you just have to start paying attention. And that's what I tell my clients when they come and have overdone themselves. I'm like, well, lack of awareness. Now you know. And if you keep doing it, you're going to keep getting into your rut.
Absolutely. Well, breaking that rut is a massive first step, isn't it? Oh, yeah.
And I think we talked about this last week. It takes 80 days average to formulate a new habit. And it takes 160 days to break old ones. Now, after you've established a new habit and then establish it within 80 days, then you get another 80 days of working that while spending the next system eliminating the bad habit. Now you have a whole other half of a year or so to live the lifestyle without the bad habit. So I always tell people, honestly, the honest answer when people say, well, how long is this going to take? I'm like, if you really, really look at it, it's going to be a year for you to see the full aspect of what you've just started.
Okay, hold that thought, Doctor. We have a break. We'll be right back. J.R. Moore here. It's taken 3 years before I could offer the inter-shelter domes for sale. During those 3 years, several different governments and militaries were taking all their production. The inter-shelter dome homes may be just what you've been looking for to provide affordable, energy-efficient, permanent, and attractive housing. These dome homes are prefabricated units that can be assembled in a few hours by 2 men with a ladder and simple hand tools. Check out the photos of these dome homes built in the Arctic, on tropical beaches, in suburban areas, and in forests. All the details, many photographs, and the pricing of the dome homes are listed on the left-hand side of my homepage at thelibertyman.com. I think you'll find these homes are not only attractive, but they're energy efficient, and a bonus. You can disassemble them and reassemble them as many times as you feel you need to. Pretty great, huh? Something that's very, very unique. Check them out at my website at thelibertyman.com. We are back, ladies and gentlemen. We're back. J.R. Moore here on Friday the 20th of October, visiting with Dr. Phil Myers, D.C. If you want to get started with Dr. Myers, gain access to the same expertise that I do, here's what you do. Call his office, set up that first private no-charge consultation. Here's that office telephone number, 314-878-6868. Let's continue, Doctor.
So when I say that, a lot of people get kind of antsy with that. What I'm talking about is not your acute issue. Not like, for example, if you're coming to a practitioner for a relief of an acute neck pain or a back pain or something that just showed up. What I'm talking about is the long-standing behavioral pattern that you grew up in through your developmental stages of your life that you keep living over and over and over and over and over again, expecting a different result. And as long as you're not in pain or it's not stopping you from living the lifestyle that you're currently living, you don't care. But here's the thing. I think that's okay, and that is okay. I mean, totally, people can totally live that life. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about wanting to, not just a want or a desire, or if I just have enough willpower to do it, then it'll happen. But it's a knowledge and it's a knowing that there's more to this life than what I'm currently doing and currently living. There's a different consciousness level available. There's millions of thought patterns that are different, ideas, actions, relationships, so many different things that can be there. Not that if one is better than the other, but from a global standpoint, from a universal standpoint, our system is moving into a new grid. And the grid is telling you to let go of these old behavioral, developmentally programmed systems and grow out of them. And this isn't new information. This is very old information. We've been talking about it for centuries and centuries and centuries. I mean, you look into all the different scrolls that are being discovered in different pyramids and caverns and caves, sometimes 10,000 plus years ago, and they're saying this exact thing. And they're not just saying it, they're saying that this is the time, like right now. Like they were saying we have to start doing this then, but we're actually seeing that it's in this lifetime right now. This whole this next 2 to 3 generations, the next 40 to 160 years is when this is really taking hold, and we're about a quarter of the way into it already. And so this is so, so people. It's funny. I used to just see it from a allergy standpoint because I used to say this like, "Oh wow, we're going to help desensitize you from your allergens, and next year you'll really notice the difference." And that holds true all the time, and it holds true with this as well. You start changing a lifestyle program now. Next year, at the same time, you're going to notice that the lifestyle that you've been living from last year has really propelled you forward that you never saw possible.
Amazing. Absolutely amazing. We truly live in amazing times, don't we, sir?
We do.
Here's a break. Call number is 800-313-9443. We'll be right back.
You are tuned in to the Republic Broadcasting Network. Visit our website by going to republicbroadcasting.org.
Ladies and gentlemen, J.R. Moore here. We're continuing our energy cleaner promotion, which began August of 2016. In this promotion, you get to buy an energy cleaner, $70 off retail, and a mattress pad, 10% off retail. $200 of the purchase price of the energy cleaner goes to Republic Broadcasting. This is a great way to help get energy cleaners out to people who need them and have some financial issues to deal with. And, of course, a great way to support Republic Broadcasting. Here's what you do. Send in a postcard. My address is John Moore, P.O. Box 201, Davidsville, Missouri. We pick a postcard every 2 weeks. If your postcard is drawn, you get the chance to buy the energy cleaner, $70 off retail, and 10% off the mattress pads. Put your name and your address, your telephone number, and your email address on the postcard, and we wish you the best of luck. Thank you. J.R. Moore here on Friday the 20th of October. My website is thelibertyman.com. Interesting free downloads. One that my wife and I discussed briefly last night. The book, copyright's long expired. Book titled The Power of Your Subconscious Mind by Dr. Joseph Murphy. It's on my section under free downloads at my website at thelibertyman.com. I read my copy at least once a year. It's got tabs. It's got highlights. It's a great book. It gives you detailed instructions on how to achieve any goal that you need to achieve. Also, my website, of course, is a marvelous healing device. I use mine every night. It's called the Energy Cleaner. I do. I use mine every night. When I'm traveling, I have the Energy Cleaner pad on the seat of the vehicle I'm driving in. We focus on back pain, arthritis pain, joint pain. It helps all those things. Getting a great night's sleep, it will help with that also. The Energy Cleaner only costs $285, shipping included. Pretty cheap considering how much good it does for you. Keep in mind, I offer a 30-day money-back guarantee. That's what I do, from me to you. It's my home business. When you place your order, I'm the guy that boxes them up and ships them from the little country post office in Cherryville, Missouri, directly to you by United States Postal Service. I do take PayPal, MasterCard, and Visa. And checks can be sent to my address at thelibertyman.com. Toll-free order line 24 hours a day. Here it is, 800-592-9543. I say again, 800-592-9543. Visiting with Dr. Phil Myers, Easy to get started with Dr. Myers. He's my personal physician. All you need to do is call his office to set up that first private, no-charge consultation at 314-878-6868. Let's continue, Doctor.
So we have been, just as a society, so used to, whether we acknowledge it or not, stresses, traumas, and dramas. Our lifestyles are full of, or at least we are surrounded by, whether you eat them or not, a lot of excitotoxins, and we need to start doing our best to start eliminating those excitotoxins out of our lives. The NutraSweets out of your, it's amazing that we still have to have this conversation, and that there's still people out there that think drinking 6 sodas a day is okay. Where it's like, oh my God, do you realize what it's doing to your body? Well, it's not affecting my life, and that's the mentality.
I know.
And we really need to start. I mean, so the people that I sound biblical here, for the eyes to hear and the ears to hear, eyes to see, the ears to hear. I mean, it's a global thing. It's nothing personal to anybody. We're all having to do this. If you choose to do it or not, great. If you don't choose to do it or not, great. It's just, but we're all moving in this direction. The birds are going to fly south for the winter. Whether you choose to fly south with them or not and then freeze, that's your choice. But we really have to, as a society, let go of these lifestyle systems that literally keep us stuck and trapped and stuck within everything. Of course, and it's affecting our blood, it's affecting our nutrition, our metabolism, it's affecting our genetics, it's affecting your neurology. And here's the thing. As a little kid, you start seeing them as effects in your development. So you start seeing, oh wow, my child is developing a little slower or not as quick as everybody else, or he or she has this ADD, ADHD, autistic spectrum. There's a lot of gut issues going on. There's a lot of leaky gut and ammonia gut and Crohn's and irritable bowel, and all these different disease processes start showing up. But here's the thing, whether that's worked with or not and the lifestyle is eliminated or not, as that child develops into adulthood, those what were then developmental laxities end up becoming neurodegenerative diseases in adults. It's literally the same process. And yeah, it's going to catch up with you. And the whole mentality, I'll deal with it when I'm dead. It's just like, do you realize the information goes with you? The mindset, the mind energy, the belief structures all go with you. And some fundamentalists might get really upset when I say this, but Jesus ain't going to be there to take it away from you. He's going to then set you under the fire and make you do the work on the other side. So it's just going to have, so might as well do it here. And if you really, 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 really looked at it, forget about understanding, but if you really looked at it, nothing dies. It just transmutates into something else.
It's a basic principle of science. Energy cannot be created or destroyed.
Mm-mm. So we think that we quote unquote die in it's very Greek. The soul goes this way and the body goes that way. Soul goes to heaven, body goes to hell. That's very Greek. But for example, in the 1st century Aramaic, which is basically the foundation of pretty much most major belief systems on the country, not Greek, is there's no difference between soul and body. There's not this spirit, body, soul thing that we as our world have looked at it. It's more like body plus soul plus spirit. It's a oneness. there is no separation. So where the Greeks said your soul goes here and your body goes there, well, in the physics of it, there's no separation ever between the mind, the body, the soul, the spirit. It all goes to the same place, back to the source of oneness, which in all reality you have within you. And it's not some entity out there that's going to make everything better. It's within you. And this pushes the buttons of a lot of belief structures. It pushes the buttons of a lot of religious structures. But even if you then listen to the new theologians that are seeing the combination of that it's not Greek, they understand what the Greeks were talking about, but they also understand the whole body, mind, soul of ancient texts. And they're all saying the same thing that I'm saying right now. And that I love this one theologian, I cannot remember his name, but he basically says religion now is still living in 101, whereas the teaching of the great sages of the world was always teaching you to be at class 300. Well, it's time for us as a society to mature out of Religion 101 and start living in human being 300. And this is coming from not just me, but from really respected theologians and really respected scientists at the major institutional universities. So take it for what it is, that either Dr. Phil's crazy or he may be on to something and he's sharing it with you. But either way, it's a possibility, and if you want to go for it, go for it. If you are wanting to continue living the life you're living, live the life you're living. Neither one of it is bad or good. It's just at some point, the life you live is going to create the life that you're going to be living.
Well, we're challenging a lot of foundational beliefs here. The Council at Nicene, around 300 AD, they eliminated all references to reincarnation, didn't they, Doctor?
You know more than that, but probably.
Well, they did. They did.
Okay.
So that was to maintain control. And the purpose of most corporate religions, I don't use the term organized religion, I use the term corporate religions, is to maintain control. That you cannot achieve your goal unless you do what we say and what we tell you to do in the same way, in the manner we tell you to do it. When Jesus was encouraging people to be independently worshipful of the higher being and not need a corporate religion between them and their final goal of achieving what they want to achieve.
Pretty much. And so we're living in a world right now where we have so much free will and ability. There's more rights that have quote unquote been given back to the barefoot peasants, like you like to say, than has been in history for eons. And what was it? Not only less than 100 or 200 years, women couldn't vote. Now are able to. I don't even think it was that long ago. I might be overshooting.
It was around 1917, thereabouts.
Okay,
right.
So about 100 years. Yeah, women couldn't even vote. You had no voice. And now look at you girls. You girls are ruling the health and wellness industry. Anything and everything revolves around women empowerment. And we talked about this on the show the past couple times about masculine empowerment and what that actually means for us men. because the girls got it. I mean, they got it. I mean, there's not an ifs, ands, buts about it. But when you see men start getting it and start living that soulful life, that feeling life, and where they're connecting to their divine masculine and their divine feminine, oh my God. And for the women, living your divine feminine and letting go of what you thought was masculine, which is like you have to be so stoic and not feel your feelings and push through the grindstone and conquer, and win at all costs, whether in school, business, or family. It's going to happen. Now, that's from a feminine standpoint, that is the challenge for the women, is to let go of that ruggedness and start owning their masculine, their divine masculine, which is so, like, where their divine feminine is very nurturing. The divine masculine is very giving. And it's this give and take. It's this yin and yang. And what we're seeing is it's not going to be yin and yang or masculine and feminine or night and day and dark and light anymore. It's a singularity between both of them, spinning within themselves, creating infinite potential. And that sounded esoteric, but that is hardwired in the geometry, in nature, in the physics, in the astrological standpoint, in the neurology, in the psychology, in the consciousness. I mean, it is everywhere, stating it in exactly that way, utilizing just their language. But what we're starting to see, and again, this is going to be, it's not going to be that far along that all the textbooks are going to have to be rewritten, because the whole language of the whole system is unifying.
Well, this is cutting-edge information, Doctor, and I encourage people to take advantage of the opportunity to gain access to your expertise and regain lost health. You help people at both ends of the spectrum. You've helped my grandson, who is attending college on a football scholarship. So you help the high-end performing athletes. You've helped me with different issues I've had, including my training to run the 100-meter dash. And you help people with various chronic conditions. Everybody, the entire spectrum, men, women, boys, and girls. Right, Doctor?
Absolutely. And because here's the cool part. We're all human. And, yeah, you treat human being like you treat a human being, but every human being's different. But we all have an electrical system. We all have a chemical system. We all have an emotional system. We all have these amazing systems. And when you start putting them all together and collectively training them, oh boy, sky's the limit.
Yeah, well, there is no limit, basically, is what you're
saying.
And people think in terms of limitations. And breaking through the standard American paradigm of I can live it how I want, consume any product I want, whether it's alcohol or tobacco products. When something hurts, I will go to a medical doctor, and he'll either cut something out or give me a pill to make it go away. And that's how most people in America live their lives, isn't it?
It really is. And I always like quoting St. Paul with this, is when he talks about praying without ceasing. Now, prayer in his language was a doing, being mindful, being action-orientated into what you're doing in the highest and greatest good within what, from his standpoint, Christ consciousness. Keep your eye on that consciousness level in your doing. And so all we're being asked to do is to do the things that serve us at our highest and greatest potentials, for not only for yourself, but within the community that you live in. And we are being challenged with this big time. What was it? This new moon. The gravity of that moon with the planetary alignments was so heavy. And if you really paid attention, there was a lot of stuff going on. And since the 18th, it's let up, and now you're really moving in a direction if you're taking heed on it.
Hold that thought, Doctor. We had a break. We'll be right back. All right, we're back, ladies and gentlemen. We're back. J.R. Moore here on Friday the 20th of October, visiting with Dr. Phil Myers. You also can access this wealth of knowledge, expertise. All you need to do is call his office, set up that first private, no-charge consultation. Here's that office telephone number, one last time, 314-878-6868. We got about 3 minutes, Doctor.
So yeah, so much is here. I mean, so some of you are at a level of like, okay, this is a make or break at times. Some of you are at the level like, wow, this is the coolest information I've ever heard, and it's the first time I've ever heard it. And no matter what level of exposure that you've gotten this at, you definitely want to start taking action in it. And so whether it be doing just eliminating the excitotoxins out of your life, start doing some immune boosting work, getting into some type of exercise program, working on clearing out your mind energy and letting go of anger, hostility, and fear-based programs. I mean, whatever it is that no matter where you're at, there's no wrong place to start. Every single place will eventually lead you down or towards the whole system. So there's no right place to start. The right place to start is to just start and to start working on building up your wholeness. Remember, there's no separation between mind, body, soul, and spirit. They're all the same. So work on whatever level you want. It's the same thing.
It is. It is, absolutely. Well, we plug away here every week, Doctor, and we wake up a few people every week, don't we?
Planting seeds, man, planting seeds.
That's right. That's right. Well, I hope people will call your office and make those that first private no-charge consultation with you and move on from there. And you get people calling from my show from all over the United States, don't you, sir?
I do. It's a wonderful thing. And here's the thing. It doesn't matter where you are at in the country. We're able to support you in your growth. I mean, there's many avenues to the care that we provide here. It doesn't have to necessarily be you sitting in my office face-to-face.
Right, right. In fact, you've had some people call from other countries as well, haven't you, sir?
Yeah, call from other countries because we do remote work, we do live work, we do coaching work over the phone. I mean, there's so many different avenues that can be done to help you on your road.
Well, it's good to know. So I hope it gives people some peace of mind knowing it doesn't matter where they're calling from. It could be anywhere in the United States, the United Kingdom, Australia, New Zealand, even the Antarctic, right, Doctor?
Absolutely.
Okay. We're done. Have you back next week. Appreciate it, sir.
You too. Bye.
Okay. That's it for the day. That's it for the week. Get your medical supplies, your energy cleaner, your essential oils now while you can, your firearms, ammunition. Never, ever give up your guns. Have a fun, safe, productive day and weekend. And God bless America.